Zipper rolls out to the right, pitches off to Taylor, and Taylor's to the 20, down to the 15, down to the 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Billy Taylor scored a touchdown from 21 yards out. The crowd goes berserk. It was November 22nd, 1969. That they came to Barry, Michigan, all dressed in maize and blue. The words were said, the prayers were read, and everybody cried. But when they closed the coffin, there was someone else inside. Oh, they came to Barry, Michigan, but Michigan wasn't dead. And when the game was over, it was someone else instead. 11 Michigan Wolverines put on the gloves of gray, and as the organ played the victors, they laid Woody Hayes away. Under center is Wangler at the 45. He goes back. He's looking for a receiver. He throws downfield to Carter. Who's got it better than us? Nobody!
Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. We all know what week this is. Michigan, Ohio State, Meyer versus Harbaugh. The fact that Ohio State is not undefeated and pretty much out of the playoff picture really changes very little. It is still the game for both teams, their coaches, and their fan bases. On today's Game Day edition of the show, we're joined, as we always are this time of the year, by the angel of the big house, Michigan beat writer Angelique Chengelis from the Detroit News. First, though, my view from Section 17 for the week. As we learned yesterday, Chad Carr, son of Tammy and Jason Carr, and grandson of Coach Lloyd Carr, passed away quietly, surrounded by his loving family at home. Chad's 15-month battle with a rare form of brain cancer was one that we all followed. For most of us, that meant donating to various fundraisers and other efforts to raise awareness regarding this horrible form of pediatric cancer. Even though Chad has left us, the battle will rage on. I invite you to check out the Chad Tough Facebook page for more information regarding where you can send donations to help Jason and Tammy Carr in their fight to make sure more research is done on the cancer that took Chad's life. We all have very busy lives, and this week it's packed with Thanksgiving, the game, and seeing family we don't get to see too often most of the year. Please take a minute of your day to say a prayer or remember the Carr family this week as they gather to lay Chad to rest. Funeral arrangements will be announced today. Tammy Carr will post them on the Chad Tough Facebook page. We all know who the angel of the big house is. She has covered Michigan football for, well, let's just say for a long time. Beat writer Angelique Chengelis from the Detroit News joins me next here on the Michigan Man on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. With us on our Michigan Game Day segment this week for the 6th year, as we get ready for the game, from the Detroit News, Michigan beat writer Angelique Chengelis. Welcome back, Angelique.
I am so honored to be back again for the podcast during the week.
As we always say every year, it is my favorite week of the year, and I know it is yours too.
It is. I mean, and you know, I've said it all these years too. in part and mostly because I grew up in Ohio and I grew up with the rivalry and watching it with my father, and it's a big deal, and I just I get a little more excited this week.
And there's so much history and tradition to this week and to this game, and despite what happened in Columbus on Saturday and their loss with Michigan State, there is still a lot riding in this game for both teams.
Oh, for sure. I mean, and look, I think, Mike, when we talked early in the season, I was saying 7 wins, maybe 8. So already Michigan is serving notice under Jim Harbaugh. And I think what's been really impressive is their ability to win on the road in the Big Ten. They've done that admirably and coming off back-to-back wins to finish their road season. And, if some stranger things can happen, right, have happened. If Michigan State somehow loses to Penn State and Michigan beats Ohio State, well, I mean, they're playing for something much bigger. But generally speaking, yes, of course, it's about the game for these teams, for Ohio State and Michigan, and we know that, they know that, and the country knows it. And it's going to be fun to see Urban versus Jim Harbaugh for the first time, too.
Well, that's the thing. We're hoping it's another Bo versus Woody, the 10-year war. Who knows? May or may not be. But at least this is the first edition, and that in itself makes it very interesting and exciting.
It does. And I think a lot of people anticipated that when Brady Hoke was head coach at Michigan because of his Ohio ties and how he grew up a Michigan fan and calling Ohio State, Ohio, all that stuff that we know about. And obviously it didn't transpire. And I think that here's a guy now who brings a different element to the rivalry, a guy who played in it for Michigan as a quarterback, a guy who guaranteed a victory at Ohio State in 1986. And I think that's just a different layer, and it really does make you think that maybe Urban versus Harbaugh it can bring back that Woody versus Bo feeling to the rivalry. And you're right, we don't know how long both of them will coach at the school, but I think at least for however long they're there, you'd like to think that maybe that feeling and that aspect comes back to the 10-year war and just gives fans that kind of feeling again, because I think everybody likes that feeling.
No, absolutely. It's been missing for a long time, so I think we're all looking forward to something even closely resembling the 10-year war. So starting this Saturday, we'll find out. But before we talk about the game, Angelique, let's just back up to the Penn State game over the weekend. After getting gashed on the ground by IU last week, Minnesota a couple of weeks before that, I thought Saturday the defense played very well, especially the defensive front. They really stepped up.
I thought so, too, and especially in the red zone. And I mean, Penn State got deep into Michigan territory 3 times and came up with only field goals, which, I think you certainly don't want to give up any points, but I think that's definitely a moral victory of sorts. And, Hackenberg at the end, Penn State's quarterback, the Michigan players were saying they could tell he was tired. They could tell that he was sort of wincing when he was throwing at the end. They got to him quite a bit. He took 4 sacks. He got hit more than that. And, they had 6 rushing yards in the second half. They just couldn't get anything going. And part of that is probably an element of the Penn State offense is not that great. But I think that Michigan's defense definitely felt like, at least is what the guys said, Mike, that they felt like they had to prove something, especially after that Indiana game, giving up all those rushing yards that you mentioned. And previously, the yards they gave up against Minnesota in the air. I mean, they definitely wanted to come together with a more complete kind of performance on defense.
Well, and it was a good and complete performance. And offensively, the ground game sputtered again, but Jake Rudock and the passing game looked very sharp for the 3rd consecutive week, which we have to feel good about.
Wow, I don't think I would have said that Jake Rudock would be winning games for Michigan like he has and really winning the offense for them. At the start of the season, I just didn't see that, but he is much more comfortable now, Mike, and he has said it. He's gotten into a rhythm with the receivers, and he's got some guys who can make catches like Jake Butt and Amara Darbo and Jehu Chesson, and he's the first Michigan quarterback to throw for 250 yards or more in 3 straight games, which I find remarkable. And he didn't, credit the offensive line, and I would also say Devion Smith in pass protection. He only took 2 sacks. And I know that Penn State was missing a key guy on the defense and came in as the sack leader in the country. But taking 2 sacks against that defense, I thought was also very admirable.
Offensively, right now, one of the statistics that I found interesting during the game was that in the first 8 games, Michigan's run-pass ratio on offense was 70%. 70% run, 30% pass. The last 3 weeks, it's completely flipped. It's roughly 70% pass, 30% run, which tells you Michigan's willing to do whatever they need to do to win games and how much improved that passing game is.
It does mean that, and it's a credit to Jim Harbaugh that he's been willing to, and Jeff Fish and Tim Drevno as well, that they are willing to do what it takes, and they can change their game plan if that's what's needed. And I think part of it is a function of the running backs are not quite healthy, and who knows what's going on. Drake Johnson didn't get a carry. He did play a little bit in that game Saturday, but Devion Smith only had 39 yards. He had 13 carries, and he's dealt with an ankle problem earlier in the season. And, I don't know where this running game is, but you're right. They've found a way to get Jake Rudock very comfortable, and he looks, in a matter of 3 games, I think it's really remarkable how different he looks from earlier in the season. And I guess I never understood how much timing and work on getting together with the receivers and finding a rhythm. And, you forget that he just got here in May and really just had summer workouts and then camp. And that is not a lot of time. And not everybody can be Russell Wilson coming in as a graduate transfer. And I'm not saying Jake Rudock is Russell Wilson, but he's definitely looking like a more comfortable guy. And like his dad, I spoke to his dad last week, said, you wish he could have another year with Jim Harbaugh to develop him even more.
Yeah, huge difference. I think everyone can see that, especially this time of the year. Incredible. The other thing that I liked about Saturday, Angelique, special teams were key. Good coverage on kicks and punts. Jordan Lewis, nice return. Blake O'Neill, he continues to just amaze me with those surgical punts that he drops inside the 20 and the 10, and that is so huge.
He's been a huge asset. And when I was flying back from Penn State, I was thinking about how a couple of years ago I would ask Brady Hoke about punters all the time, and people would make fun of me for always asking about the punters. I think it's such an underrated aspect of the game, and it's so important when you have a punter who can be a weapon. That's just, and Blake O'Neill has proven that. And look, everybody knows what happened at the end of the Michigan State game, and I'm not going to belabor that. And he's had a couple, running on that one fourth and 19. Okay, that was a mistake as well. But I think, generally speaking, overall, he has been a big weapon and a big asset for them. And and the Jordan Lewis kickoff return was enormous. And I thought that was sort of funny. After the game, Harbaugh said that Lewis looked at him in the huddle and said, "Yeah, I'm going to break their back." And Harbaugh said, "Yeah, have at it." And he did it. And I just, that to me, again, proves what kind of, Jordan Lewis is, everybody's understands how valuable he's been to the defense this year. But I think what he's been able to contribute recently in special teams is really evidence of how tough he is and how tenacious he is.
Well, I guess the only negatives, if we want to take some from Saturday, were the blocked punt. Jake had another pick, but something did not look right on that pick. I don't know if you had a chance to talk to them after the game about that. Just looked like a receiver must have broken off a route or something, because that just didn't look right, especially the way Jake's been throwing lately. And then there was his fumble, too, but none of them really cost Michigan on Saturday.
No, that's true. And I guess if you're going to have mistakes, that's the way to be able to recover from them. And I think of the last 3 games, that was probably, I don't even want to say shakiest, but it wasn't Jake Rudock's most efficient game, but I thought overall he was very, very efficient. And I don't know what happened on the pick. It's I'm not sure why no one asked him about it. I think because everybody was more focused on moving on and looking ahead to the Michigan Ohio State game, which is probably my fault too.
And one of the interesting aspects of the game on Saturday, Angelique, Jim Harbaugh didn't like quite a few of the calls on Saturday. It was quite vocal. He started throwing off clothing after one of the calls, which was funny. But, it made me think, is it just me, or the officiating in the Big Ten this year has been as shaky as I can remember it? It's just not just Michigan games, but across the conference, we're seeing just calls that make you scratch your head.
Yeah, it's not just you. It really isn't, Mike, but I think because we both watch Michigan on the weekends, it looks very pronounced. 13 penalties against Penn State. They had 13 against Indiana. And that's not to say that a lot of them weren't deserved and accurate calls, but there were head scratchers, and I still think that Jake Rudolph's been hit a couple times, and players should have been called for targeting. I really thought the Zettel hit on him was a targeting hit, a penalty, but it was overruled or reviewed and just roughing the passer. But I think I think this serves notice that the Big Ten has to really look at what they're doing with their officials. And I do think that it would, and I don't know how they could handle it, but I think that they have to make an official available after games to media for to question them on certain plays. I mean, there definitely been calls all season that I would love to know more what they saw and why they called it or did not call it. And sadly, I don't think that's going to happen. So, but it's been a very the word you use, shaky, is very appropriate.
I was thinking a couple of weeks ago, I don't know if it would be a money issue, but doing what the NHL does and have the command center in Toronto, maybe the Big Ten could have in Chicago, where every replay goes through the command center. So you have someone else looking at it, not in the stadium, because some of these reviews this year, you think, well, the officials on the field throw it up to the booth, and that has to make them feel good sometimes. But some of the reviews that have come back after seeing the tape, you think, are you kidding me?
Yeah, no, you're right. And that would be a great way to handle it. I doubt that the Big Ten or any conference would go that route. You're right, because of the money. But, I mean, you also have to look at least put a time limit on it. I mean, the Michigan State game felt like it was going to drag on until about 10 o'clock at night. I mean, felt like every penalty, every call was being reviewed, and it just takes forever. And I think you at least put a time limit to say you've got to make a decision in X amount of time. The game has to keep moving. But boy, 26 penalties in the last two games for Michigan. I think they're 12th now in the Big Ten in penalties this season.
Yeah, it's a bit much. With us here on our Michigan Game Day segment this week as we get ready for the game is Michigan beat writer Angelique Chengelis from the Detroit News. Let's get to the main course, Angelique, and talk about the game. And I think most of us were hoping Ohio State would roll into the Big House at 11-0, defending national champions, and Michigan would have their chance to take them down. But, of course, the Spartans changed that on Saturday in Columbus. Were you shocked by how dominant the Spartans were against them in the shoe?
I was a little bit. I mean, especially without their NFL quarterback. And I know the weather was crummy. I know all that, but geez, they were playing in Ohio Stadium, and they'd had a 23-game winning streak going into the game. But boy, I think this proves, not that it needs to, more evidence of this, but Mark D'Antonio is an awfully good coach. And, he said all the right things during the week, and I still thought, Urban's got it under control. They've got so many weapons. This is definitely going to be an Ohio State win. I thought it'd be a slim win, even without Cook, because no one knew going into the game if he would play. But it was very impressive. I mean, really, really an impressive performance by Michigan State. But yeah, I mean, I think it doesn't take the shine off of this game, I don't think, but you're right. That would have been the storyline that I think people would love to have seen. And you can see it on the secondary ticket, the ticket market, that the tickets have dropped off a little. I was checking last week before the game and checking now after the game, and definitely the ticket prices have dropped off a little bit for the Michigan-Ohio State game. I think largely because of the Ohio State loss.
Well, a couple of weeks ago, Angelique, I didn't think Michigan matched up real well with Ohio State, but with our defense and the improvement in the passing game, I think now, especially after you and I talked about this before we started taping, if you've watched Ohio State all year, you just were waiting for them to take off. It just has seemed all year like there's just something missing. You don't know what it is. I'm sure Urban Meyer would like to find out what it is. But in the end, I think we match up much better now in Week 12 and have a very good chance to beat them on Saturday in Ann Arbor.
I think Michigan does match up well, and I think it helps them too that the game is in Ann Arbor, and they have played. I mean, they played them tight a few years ago when Devin Gardner was on a broken foot, and I think the one reason I would be a little bit hesitant is because of Michigan's running game, and that's why I'm just absolutely convinced that Jabril Peppers will play more on offense on Saturday, and I feel like they've been saving him the last couple games as much as possible be available and to be ready to play that game. But overall, yes, I would agree. Particularly defensively, I think Michigan matches up. And even, I thought the Ryan Glasgow injury, after the Indiana game, I thought, wow, maybe that's going to be too tough to overcome. But they definitely had a very nice performance against Penn State, as we discussed. But, it just depends on how Urban Meyer can get these guys ready mentally, too. And can he find that button to push that will get them on the same page and find that. I think it's really hard to find what we're saying has been missing is some kind of something that's not clicking all season. I'm not sure it's that easy to find it right before the last game. And that's not to say that Ohio State has been far off, but I would agree there's just something that's been lacking in their offense. They haven't been as dynamic as I thought they would be. And but maybe they do find it. Maybe they do get motivated. I think it's going to be a really big test for Urban Meyer because he's not had to deal with too many post-loss, having to get a team motivated after a loss.
And this Ohio State defense, the spark that I think has been missing on the team is on the offensive side. Defensively, this team has been very good, and they're deep. There's really not a weakness on this defense, although Michigan State just ran the ball at them on Saturday very impressively. But as far as Michigan matching up with this defense, you would think, as good as this Ohio State defense is, and you mentioned Jabril Peppers will probably see more action this week, I would think, to get the running game going. Michigan is not going to be able to beat that defense with a 70-30 ratio, 70% passing, 30% running. There's no way.
Oh, no way. And I think, this is one of those games where there's got to be that big special teams play, I think. There's got to be something out of the norm because I just think you're right. I mean, they're going to have to try to find some kind of balance on the offense. Jake Rudock cannot win this game on his arm, I don't think. And that's not taking anything away from Jake. I just think that, as you pointed out, the Ohio State defense is too tough. But does Jabril Peppers, if he plays as much as it's just my hunch that I think he'll play, can he offer that balance in the offensive attack, in the game plan? And I think that he's shown that he can do that, and he's definitely a game changer, and he makes defensive coordinators second guess. And what did he do? He forced D'Antonio to call two timeouts in the Michigan State game. And I don't think he's not going to catch Ohio State off guard and surprise them. But they do have to find more balance because I think it's going to be really tough for Jake Rudock to have the kind of passing performance. I think it's going to be tough for Jake Butt to get open like he's gotten open. And it's not always that he's gotten open. He's made some great catches. But I just think that this presents little bit more difficulty if they're just going to try to throw the ball as much as they have.
And from a defensive perspective, Michigan's defense, they're not beleaguered up on the defensive front, but they're a little bit beaten down right now. But this is an incredible team to have to defend, I think. With J.T. Barrett, he can beat you with his feet. He can beat you with his arm. And then you have Ezekiel Elliott. And granted, we've been saying that there's something missing there, but this is still a team with a lot of talent, and it's the game. So this is a huge challenge for this Michigan defense. I think, number one, they have to contain J.T. Barrett.
Oh, that is definitely their biggest concern. I mean, J.T. Barrett's, he's second in rushing on this team. He's averaging almost 50 yards a game, and I think he scored eight rushing touchdowns, and Ezekiel has doubled that. But J.T. Barrett can throw the ball. He's completed like 64% of his attempts and averaging about 75 yards a game. And that, I guess you don't need to even quote statistics. You've seen what he's able to do, and it's going to be tough for them to contain him. And what's the cliche? Oh, if you can't contain him, you got to slow him. And maybe that's what you do, because they're not a one-dimensional team, and I think that makes it also more challenging for Michigan's defense to get ready for this. But you talked about wearing down, and yeah, I thought for sure at Indiana they looked like a team that had worn down, and I think that they listen to what Jim Harbaugh says about it's suck it up time, and I think that they take that what he says. I mean, it sounds sort of cliche to us sometimes when he says some of the things he says, but what did he say before the spring? It's so simple it might work. And I think that sometimes when he makes those simple statements, I think that it resonates with these players. And they do say, if you're winning, you hurt less. And I think that's how the defenses approach these late games, especially the game at Penn State, and it's got to be the way they approach the Ohio State game as well.
Well, in so many of these great games in the game, Angelique, great players have stood up and made their mark in history, and you wonder, who will it be this year? Jabril Peppers, Jordan Lewis, Jake Rudock, or J.T. Barrett, Ezekiel Elliott, Joey Bosa, whoever it is. This game always, and I mean always, brings out the best in these teams, doesn't it?
It really does, and it's just, that's part of the reason why it's become such a darling of the nation. I mean, and not recently. I mean, for a long time, because those kind of performances are sort of the norm for this game, and whether it's Troy Smith or Charles Woodson, and they come from both sides. And you're right, it's hard to say. It's hard to predict who that might be. I really think Peppers is going to be a guy that they rely on a lot for Michigan. And I think, boy, it's hard to pick if you had to say, who do you think, J.T. Barrett or Ezekiel Elliott? And I'd actually have to say J.T. Barrett right now. I think that they can probably find a way to slow Elliott. I don't think they'll stop Elliott. But, I thought that Indiana game really exposed Michigan's linebackers quite a bit. But I think J.T. Barrett's the guy who can have a big game for Ohio State, and I definitely think it's Jabril Peppers at Michigan.
Well, a final couple of questions here for you, Angelique. Having covered Jim Harbaugh this year at his pressers and post games, is he what you thought he would be? And by that I mean he's very controlled, very stoic. I think a lot of us thought we'd see this year some blow-ups in post games or some anger from time to time. We've not seen any of that. Has covering him surprised you in that way?
It has. I mean, it really has, Mike. I really thought, after the Utah game, I thought that was definitely a sign of things to come. But then I still wasn't sure. I mean, they'd lost the game. They played hard, and he was pleasant. He was forthcoming. He was very positive. And, I think he's also aware that these players do, even though they say they don't read anything, they don't listen to anything, they do. They're on social media. They see story links. They listen to the radio. They know what people are saying about them, so they know what their coach is saying about them in public. And I think he has used that, and not in a negative way, but I think he praises them all the time. I mean, look, he was going on and on about Michigan's offensive line after the Penn State game, and I'm not so sure I would have gone on and on. They protected Rudock, but I think that there's still some issues with his offensive line, but not in his world, because he wants his offensive line to think he really believes in them. But back to your original point, yeah, I really thought that there would be some blow-ups. I thought there would be some more anger, and he's done it in his way, where he does the stare down thing, or just you say, hey, isn't it hot outside? And he just says yes. No, he doesn't give you anything if he doesn't want to. And he is very measured, and you can tell when you ask him a question, is the wheels are spinning. Like, how am I not going to answer this, but say something? Mm-hmm. And I give him credit; he's very good at it, which is frustrating at times. But generally speaking, yes, I've been surprised, because I thought that there would be a little bit more. There would be more outbursts in post games and even on Mondays at the weekly press conferences.
Angelique and I were having some technical issues with the call dropping when we were recording, so we missed a bit at the end of the interview. As always, though, it's great to have the angel of the big house on the show, talking Michigan football and, of course, about the game. Up next, some closing thoughts for today and a look ahead at what we have in store for you later this week on the show, here on The Michigan Man on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V-Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. On Wolverine Quick Hits today, at his presser on Monday, Coach Jim Harbaugh said every week is rivalry week to him, but of course some are more special than others, such as this week. Jim said he doesn't need countdown clocks or bulletin board material to get ready for this game. He has every player's attention, and they all know what's on the line Saturday. On Thursday's show, we'll update the injuries, as we should have a better idea by that time of the week. I know it's a busy week for all of us, but here at the show it's extra busy. Along with today's show, I have 2 more coming your way. If everything works out, tomorrow I'll have a Michigan Man Extra show. My guest will be Michigan great Dr. Billy Taylor. We all know what a great 3-time All-American running back he was, and most of us have memorized Bob Ufer's call of his famous 21-yard run to seal the victory against Ohio State in 1971. What happened after his Michigan football career is a story you will all want to hear. Some of you may know the story. Even if you do, it will be interesting to hear Dr. Billy Taylor himself as he tells it. That's tomorrow on our Michigan Man Extra. Then on Thursday, on our Visitors Edition, we'll hear from the senior Ohio State beat writer from the Columbus Dispatch. Back with us again this year, Tim May. So I hope you'll find some time this week to check out the shows. That will do it for today. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Have a great Wolverine week, everyone. Remember to keep the Carr family in your prayers during this very difficult and sad time. I'll see you back here tomorrow with my guest, Michigan great Dr. Billy Taylor. Until then, take care, and as always, go blue. Thanks for joining us today on The Michigan Man, here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V-Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or email us at the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. That's the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!